Do you wish we were still in Asheville?
Like, do I wish I didn't have to go to work? Do I wish the humidity were not oppressive? What part of being in Asheville?
Do you wish you weren't in our nation's
or the state of Florida
COVID epicenter adjacent to Duval County?
Yeah, I mean, that's something.
Time is a flat circle. We're back. It's like just like last March here in Northeast Florida.
In terms of actual infection rates, you mean?
Yeah, in terms of omnipresent danger. Like to begin every podcast with that. I will say that the one review that we received that addressed the fact that we appear to begin every podcast working against our very goals by front-loading it with the horrors of the world before going into nice, light seed discussion, otherwise gave us 5 stars.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do think it's a good structure, right? Is to remind you why you need escapism
right.
and then provide an opportunity.
Sure.
I just need a constant stream of podcasts so I don't have to think about my own thoughts.
Yeah.
I assume everyone else
That's
is
why
the
people
same.
listen to podcasts. We are providing mostly just steady human voices, I think. Well, in other front-end upsetting news to deliver, I'm sorry to have to break this to you, but action star Kiefer Sutherland's gardening supplies have been stolen. This is
Is this breaking news?
This is celebrity garden news, which I really need to provide a jingle for. But in celebrity garden news this week, Kiefer Sutherland's looks like a bunch of gardening tools and gear, including a hedge trimmer valued at more than $1,500, has been stolen. Do you think he'll be able to recover from this?
I don't even understand how he cared. Like, how did it make the news?
Yeah, I don't understand. Did he call TMZ and say, I have a hot tip for you?
About me, and it's that my hedge trimmer was stolen. Like, I don't even know what's the equivalent. It's like if I put down a quarter on my table at a cafe and stood up for a minute and I came back and my laptop was still there, but someone had taken my quarter. And then
you called TMZ.
Yeah.
Well, it's worth noting that the TMZ headline is Kiefer Sutherland gardener's gear stolen. So even they understand that he's not doing his own gardening, and that is in fact the gardening gear owned by his gardener.
By his landscaper, gardener,
sure.
whatever.
The rest
had their stuff stolen. Well, that's much worse news now that you put it that way.
From his property, though. And then the rest of the headline is
But who's out the money? That's the question. Is it
that is a good question.
Professional gardener, or is it Kiefer Sutherland?
Well, I hope it's Kiefer Sutherland. The rest of the headline is Kiefer Sutherland gardener's gear stolen, ellipsis. He needs a good whacker. 3 exclamation points.
Wow.
I don't know what that implies. The thing is that could imply 2 things, neither of which makes any sense. One, it could imply he needs to put a hit out on the thief. Right? Second, it implies he needs to jerk off.
Well, that's probably true.
Yeah. Well, he has I think a legendary both drinking and anger problem. So if he did some more jerking off, it could only benefit him, probably.
I don't know anything about Kiefer Sutherland. Like, I couldn't name a movie he's in.
I think he was like the hero of the film 24, which glamorizes the way that American CIA agents like to torture information out of people.
You're talking about the Fox TV series?
Is that I guess it was a TV series. You're right.
I've never seen it, but
well, I know that
it's not a movie.
I know that it loves torture and that it really thinks it's a good idea.
Ooh, you know who else loved torture?
Ooh, yeah. This is other good celebrity news of the week.
Speaking of torture, good news, everyone.
This isn't garden news, but we just want to remark on how great it is that Donald Rumsfeld is dead. Oh, it's the only good thing that's happened all year as far as I'm concerned.
Far too late to actually do any good for the world.
Yeah, but what a bad man.
Truly.
This has been your week's celebrity garden news.
You're Roman.
You're Allison. And this will either be a full-length obituary for our fallen defense secretary or seedy business.
It's seedy business. It's seedy business.
Speaking of torture, guess who's dead would be quite an opening line for that person who was slightly put off by our distressing and high stakes intros.
Well, it's a Sunday early afternoon. It's an hour that we usually wouldn't be able to record because of my church job that I work. However, I informed them this past week that I absolutely would not be coming to church because of the Delta variant COVID outbreak, of which our area is the nation's epicenter, as previously mentioned. Unless they started masking again, they were like, nah. So I'm just not there. We'll see what happens. But that's what affords us the opportunity to record on this, which looks to be a beautiful Sunday thus far. The sun is out. We had a couple weeks of just pretty unrelenting rain and thunderstorms every single day. The last couple days have been the first sunny days in a while. I know that we were out in the garden a little bit this morning. Will you tell me what is in the garden?
Then let us cultivate our garden. It's the only way to make life endurable.
I don't know. It's all dead.
Hold on. This is supposed to be the part where it's relaxing now. Was it tortured to death by the late Donald Rumsfeld?
You know, I think it's a combination of, we had a couple weeks where it rained heavily every day, but it's also extremely hot all the time. I don't know. It's just the worst combination of the soil is bad, the heat is relentless.
Well, we got a few things that are not dead and in fact doing well. Tell me about those.
We have like 2 cantaloupes.
We had mentioned that the melon that we had planted was flowering like crazy, but hadn't developed any fruits yet.
Yeah, and it seems like it now has 2 melons on the vine.
Yeah.
So that's something.
It is something. Where there's 2, I bet there will be more at some point even. But
I don't know how many cantaloupes one vine can reasonably produce, actually. I've never successfully grown a cantaloupe before.
Well, this is a great time for a first. They're about the size of like a fist right now.
Sure.
Do you think we should cut into them and see if they're ready?
One of them is stunted. One of them is was the first one to develop, but is much smaller than the other one. So I don't know what we'll get, but
we're going to get something. One thing that we're going to get, as long as we don't fuck it up, a whole lot of appears to be kumquats.
Well, we've got to keep them on the tree for another, 9 months?
Well, you made headway this week in that.
Yeah, I added a little bit more support.
Yeah, you trellised it in, you provided support for the branches and also the main stalk. Because it's really full of kumquats. Like there are dozens of kumquats on this tiny tree right now, and they all look to be growing well.
Yeah, so I did a little bit of research into whether I should be manually thinning the tree at this point and removing any fruit. And it seemed like I trusted a couple of articles that suggested actually kumquats are pretty good at self-thinning.
Uh-huh.
And that you could more or less, expect them to lose. It drops a couple of fruits every week.
Sure.
And we could probably expect that to continue. So we don't need to do any manual thinning. But I thought just in case, because we had a lot of winds and storms and stuff, I thought just in case, maybe better add a little support to some of the heavier and longer branches.
We did have a tropical storm come through, so we brought the tree inside for the first time for a day, but it's back out there now. I'm very excited at the prospect of eating those. I guess I have to wait. You
do have to wait. It's true.
They're about the size of, I don't know what to liken them to at the moment. The majority of them, I would say, are bigger than cherry tomatoes at this point by a little bit.
Sure.
Anything else not dead in the backyard?
Well, I did plant that pumpkin that my workmate had given me. we'll see what comes of that.
Yeah, the one that is adapted for, his claim was it was adapted for, he had planted
That it works well in this location, but our soil is just so bad. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, we'll see, I guess. I got a new garden hose this week in an effort to, usually when we make purchases, we make purchasing decisions together by and large, but I thought I would relieve you of the decision fatigue of this particular purchase, and I made a garden hose purchase myself, and it is too short. So I fucked it up, adding further stress to your life instead of removing stress, but I've got a replacement coming. All right, so the catalog for this week I chose because it was actually casually mentioned by Joan, who we interviewed in, I guess, 2 weeks ago's full podcast from Asheville. She mentioned, when we asked her what her favorite seed catalog was, she had a couple in mind, but she mentioned John Scheepers. And I think she mentioned it because they more famously sell flower bulbs. And I think that was what she was referring to. But as is the purview of this podcast, we'll actually look at their kitchen garden seeds catalog. So this will be the John Scheepers Kitchen Garden Seeds 2021 catalog. I think we last did John Scheepers in 2018 in the 3rd episode that we ever recorded. So it seems like it's time again. The Doughboys just did their 6th Taco Bell episode this past week. So I feel like we can do a second John Scheepers episode after 3 intervening years. So John Scheepers, the man, he was a Dutchman. He was born in 1878. He immigrated to the U.S. at age 19. The company lore is that on the boat over to the United States, he met a Dutch bulb exporter who offered him a position as an American representative for the company. He ended up founding his own company and began publishing a volume catalog called John Scheepers' Beauty from Bulbs in 1905, which was published for decades, and it was actually a fancy volume. It was a hardcover book with watercolor illustrations and, quote, I'm quoting this from their website, effusive romantic poetry about the beauty of flowers and the importance of gardens in one's life. He famously popularized the tulip and was known as the Tulip King, apparently. And they began publishing their garden seed catalog in 1908. I did find a copy, a PDF of one of the early Beauty from Bulbs volumes. And it is really lovely. It, like they said, it's a hardcover. There are just beautiful watercolors of flowers throughout. I'm just going to pull up a random. I pulled up irises here. The irises section leads with a quote from the Iliad. Various iris, Jove's commands to bear, speeds on the wings of winds through liquid air. So that's the sort of vibe that this company has. Classic verse, beautiful watercolor images. Scheepers himself stated that the 4 blessings of the garden were: number 1, the benediction of a tired body; 2, the creation of beauty; 3, adventure; and 4, tranquility. Do you, Allison, experience these blessings of the garden when you enter ours?
Well, today I experienced some deep frustration.
Would you say that was analogous to adventure?
Yeah, sure. Of those things, I guess it was adventure.
The benediction of a tired body is so fun, I think. I mean, I really wish when my body felt like shit, I could frame it as a true blessing. Yeah, so this guy was he's an extremely rich motherfucker, like more than I think. I mean, when we've read like about Landreth's founding and the bunch of the old seed companies, like were founded by a fucking 18-year-old with an enormous inheritance or something like that. Like their companies are founded by rich people. We all know this.
Sure,
by and large.
They're no Tulip King.
Right. But this guy was a rich guy. So he became director of the New York Horticultural Society in 1918. There's a bunch of documentation of correspondence he had with Eleanor Roosevelt and Calvin Coolidge. Their bulbs that they sold were super expensive. They were selling for between $2 and $5 during the Depression per bulb, which seems insane to me.
Yeah, wow.
Just like real upper crust shit. I found a New York Times article from their social section that was published in 1936 about a garden party hosted by the Scheepers, which I'd like to read to you. It's titled, Large Garden Party Held at Brookville. First of all, if the New York Times is writing an article about your party in 1936, we know what you are, right? Like, like that's news. Okay. Mr. and Mrs. John Scheepers are hosts to more than 1,000 diplomats among guests. Mr. and Mrs. John Scheepers gave a garden party this afternoon at Peridot, their place on the North Hempstead Turnpike, to more than 1,000 persons, several hundred of whom were members of the Garden Club of America and the Horticultural Society of New York. The guests were received in the Great Hall. Mr. and Mrs. Scheepers were assisted by the guests of honor, H.M. van Hersma de Witt, minister from the Netherlands, the Netherlands Consul General W.P. Monton, Baron von Eck, and Mrs. William A. Lockwood of New York and East Hampton, a former president of the Garden Club of America. I'm missing an opportunity to use my voice from this period, which I'll do for the rest of it. The wild gardens that cover several acres of woodland were gay with narcissi, wooden hyacinths, pansies, tulips, daffodils, and flowering trees. An orchestra of 50 pieces played on the lawn. Tea was served at small tables in the exhibition hall, and Dutch folk songs were sung by Erich von Bummel. The hall was decorated with specimen blooms of narcissi against a wall of black velvet, with Dutch blue checked curtains at the small casement windows. A feature of the program after tea was the releasing of homing pigeons. A feature of the program after tea was the releasing of homing pigeons. By Mr. Van Hersma de Witt, one to President Roosevelt and one to the Netherlands legation in Washington for the H.R.H. Princess Juliana in celebration of her birthday. Harry F. DuPont of Wilmington, Delaware, president of the New York Horticultural Society, and Leonard Barron, president of the Long Island Horticultural Society, were among the guests. So their party had a full orchestra. They were received into the Great Hall, and they released a legion of homing pigeons at one point.
And now I'm thinking about Armie Hammer.
Whoa.
And his father's art scam.
Yeah, give me a little aside about that.
Well, I just started thinking, boy, I'm sure glad the heirs of this family are continuing to make money from this.
Yeah, no doubt to this day.
Delightful.
Yeah, wait, what's the deal? Actual cannibal Armie Hammer's father.
We watched that Art World documentary, Made You Look.
Oh, right, yeah.
And one of the central characters is the owner of the gallery that was selling forged paintings, sold $80 million worth of forged paintings, and then filed for bankruptcy the moment they were caught. And that is Armie Hammer's father. And that's the kind of person who raises a cannibal.
Well, what are the odds that a person who'd be so decorated in the art world, so clearly talented with his eye, his discernment for good art, would raise a child who is such a talented actor?
Yeah, I know. It's incredible how it always seems to be that the wealthy are blessed with talented children.
After generation of the most talented people.
They're always great at things like skiing.
Yeah. And eating other humans.
the arts, I don't even know what to call the more expensive sports. Sailing, skiing,
The genteel physical arts.
Maybe some tennis. Nothing crass
coarse.
as to involve. Yeah.
Right. You wouldn't dunk a basketball. No way. That's for heathen. All right. Well, anyway, that's the vibe of this family. I also want to mention that in 1930, John Scheepers had the honor of naming a tulip after his wife. So the tulip was named the Mrs. John Scheepers tulip.
Incredible.
Just incredible. Wow, what a gift to his wife. Incidentally, her name was Rose Dorothy Haywood, and I'm sure did half or more of the labor for this company, but is never mentioned.
And would be a much lovelier name for a tulip.
Yeah, I know. Of course. The Dorothy Hayward tulip. You can't really name a tulip the rose tulip. I guess you could, but that would confuse the issue, maybe. All right, well, Allison is holding the physical catalog. I've looked through it a bunch. This company, despite having a nice physical catalog, is a rare case of having a physical catalog but not offering a PDF. Almost exclusively when we're able to get a physical catalog, they'll also offer a PDF on the website. But in this case, they do not. So when we were reading descriptions, I'm going to be reading descriptions from the entries on the website, but not from a PDF of the catalog. I've checked and the descriptions are the same. But what do you think about this catalog, Allison?
Well, I think inside it's very nice. It's a 2-column layout with color illustrations of the plants with a border on each page. Like the pages look really nice.
Yeah, I agree. They are color illustrations at the front and back of the catalog, and in the middle of the catalog, they are just line drawings.
Okay, I see
I don't
that.
know why that is exactly. It doesn't seem to correspond with like any particular sections. It's just like the middle portion is not colored for some reason.
No, here's what it is, I think. It's not every single flower page. There's one page of flowers that is not colored. That's just line drawings, but the rest are. And all the flowers are in the back, and because it's a folded over sheet of paper, however many pages of flowers they have that they wanted to put in color, they can make that many pages of color
vegetables at the front. Yeah. And we'll note that this is not their catalog of bulb flowers is its own catalog. This is
right. These are their seeds and
right.
Yeah,
and
annuals.
Right. And the catalog, remains mostly garden vegetable catalog. Yeah, I feel like the way that they color them seems to harken back to the watercolor illustrations that they were renowned for in their early catalogs. Like, obviously, this is not by watercolor, but they sort of look like that vibe.
These look like watercolor designs to me.
Yeah, but I agree with you that, like, the layout looks good. It looks classy. I think the fonts look good.
Yeah, they've got reasonable font choices, reasonable font pairings. They have chosen a couple different sizes and boldings and italics and stuff for different things, but in a way that is sensible. It doesn't confuse the eye on the page or anything.
Yeah, it's pleasing, I think. In contrast, I feel like the cover sort of looks like trash.
Yeah, it's clear they do not give a fuck about the cover.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
It's weird. Like, I would expect a catalog that had the internals of this to have a nice looking cover, but...
And what it is, it's a mosaic of 6 photographs. Some are close-ups on produce and flowers, and 2 are pictures of small children either holding up produce or working in the garden. Honestly, I think if they'd just chosen any one of these 6 pictures, it would have been a fine cover.
Yeah, and sort of just blew it up into a full...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But tiling them in an inset is a bad look.
It doesn't look good. Yeah, and that design sensibility is extended. We also have their flower bulb catalog in front of us because we're going to, I think, read for CD Shorts for next week out of that one. But it's the same sort of design sensibility. There's also like no front matter at all in this catalog. Like usually the first few pages of any catalog, or there's like a letter from the director and, you know, some news about the company from the past year, or some extra projects they're working on, or explanation of new offerings for this year, or something like that. There's none of that. It just goes straight into the catalog content.
Yeah, immediately, which I'm also fine with, especially because, again, the front cover of the catalog is so unappealing. It's nice to open it and immediately be greeted with something that is visually appealing. Artichoke starts on the inside of the front cover.
Yeah.
It just goes
Letter
artichokes,
A, baby.
asparagus. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Okay, go to the cover and read the banner at the bottom right-hand corner of the cover.
Photos, e-cookbook, hort tips, and web specials.
Yeah, they're directing you to their website for those things. And I was sure that they had misspelled short tips, but no, it's
horticultural tips.
It's
obviously.
hort tips, which I find to be a really funny turn of phrase. I thought they had left off the S on the front of that. But yeah, we'll give you some hot hort tips.
One other thing I like about the catalog is that they've chosen, there are places where they could include more illustrations of the products.
Yeah.
But they've opted instead to include illustrations of little garden animals.
Yeah, I saw that. That's fun.
On this page, they've got an illustration of morning glories, an illustration of nasturtiums, and then they've got a butterfly, a bat, a toad, and some ladybugs.
So they're not garden pests even, they're garden delights largely.
Yeah, of course.
Great. I think they should have someone do a watercolor picture for their cover each year.
That would be nice.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like it would be an overwhelming expense, and I think it would be a nod to their heritage, and it would look like people would actually want to pick it up if they saw it.
But counterpoint, how would they use their untaxed money to fund their child's 8-week horseback riding camp in Switzerland?
Yeah.
Where they learn about cannibalism and how much fun it is.
Yeah. Pretty good. You're really selling me on it. All right. Well, let's read a few descriptions. Do you want to read summer squash?
Wow, I know you love summer squash,
well,
so yeah.
We just, again, shat on it in last week's episode, but it got me thinking that we never really read descriptions of them because we don't like them.
Milano black zucchini. An extremely early, dark-skinned Italian variety, Milano produces large quantities quickly over a long season on vigorous dwarf bushes. It is best picked no longer than 8 inches.
Oh no, I just realized that the descriptions are different online, and I'm devastated to say better.
Ooh, well actually, let's do a little compare and contrast. Read me the online of the same one I just read.
Okay. The dramatic black skin of this traditional zucchini makes it a showy favorite. An extremely early variety to set fruit, Milano produces large quantities of swarthy zucchini over a long season on vigorous dwarf bushes, and we mean vigorous. This variety grows quickly, so keep your eye on them as they mature. It is best picked no longer than 8 inches long when it is shiny, sweet, and most flavorful. We import this unique strain directly from Italy. Delicious raw, stuffed, boiled, baked, or fried, the inky skin of this black Italian squash adds appealing color when grated in zucchini muffins, quick breads, or pound cakes.
Well, that is an extremely different description.
And very good, actually.
Yeah, sure, it's really nice.
Swarthy zucchini.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going a little overboard in a few places, but I mean, they mean it's darker.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's a adjective almost exclusively applied to human beings.
I don't know, I guess. Okay, how about this? Piccolo zucchini. This adorable zucchini looks like a tiny watermelon. Each tasty fruit is egg-shaped and deep green with paler stripes, best picked when smaller than a tennis ball. Enjoy them cooked or raw as their flesh is mild and sweet. The highly productive, spineless, compact, Bush-type plants are great for smaller gardens.
That one is the same. Yeah, they are actually pretty cool looking. I gotta say that squash and melons look the same, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're the same.
But what a nasty surprise if it's a zucchini and not a melon. Right?
Is that a problem you've had in your life? Where you
Bit right in
took a bite
through
of
the
a
skin.
tasty melon, but it was a zucchini?
I don't know. I'm afraid of it now.
All right, how about early crookneck summer squash? Circa 1750, it has smooth, curved neck, pale yellow fruits that grow up to 10 inches long, but are tastier when picked small. This beloved heirloom has creamy white flesh that is smooth, mild, and sweet, perfect for grilling and sautéing.
Yeah, oddly, the description on the website says this 18th century heirloom instead of pegging it to about 1750. It's also not termed beloved, but is otherwise comparable.
Okay, how about this one? Early prolific straight neck summer squash. Easy to grow, this sun yellow, bumpy skinned heirloom produces scads of yummy straight neck squash. Harvest no larger than 6 inches long for the most tender and succulent taste and for optimum production throughout the summer. Well, that's gross.
Scads.
No way.
No way.
No, thank you.
They have a featured recipe on the bottom where they invite you to make the vegetable tower. And it's just a bunch of grilled vegetables. They also have a recipe for zucchini basil gratin.
Well, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, maybe it is. And Mexican-style zucchini tacos, which, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, don't try to trick me into eating zucchini.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense as the centerpiece of any dish, I don't think.
I think you could pick any other squash for your gratin and it would be better, right?
Yeah, well, it'd be less wet.
Yeah. So I take it back. I take back what I said because I was really looking at this patty pan squash and imagining it with that. But of course, it's zucchini. So speaking of which, I'll read the patty pan.
Yeah, read the patty pan.
Benning's green tint patty pan squash. The scallop squash yields copious amounts of pale, green-skinned patty pans with a round, flattened, and scallop-edged shape. Growing on 3 to 4 foot tall bushes, its flesh matures to creamy white with a sweet, tender, meaty texture at just 3 inches in diameter. Picked regularly and completely, this little American heirloom can yield fruits until the first fall frost for crudité platters, quick sautés, and simply steamed sides.
At least they're very interesting looking.
Yeah, they're very cute.
I think they definitely have a place in a way that I don't see like a ring of yellow summer squash having a real utility.
I don't dislike yellow squash in the way that you do. I agree with you on your zucchini position, but I actually think yellow squash are perfectly nice if they're picked very small.
That's the thing. And we talked about this last week with eggplants, but I feel like in our youth, everything in the store was like a big version of these things and was bitter.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have a squash taste test for the podcast this summer.
Where we like go to the farmer's market and buy a bunch of different squash?
Buy a bunch of different squash and see if I can be reformed. Do you want to read a couple descriptions from a category that we both find to be appetizing?
Oh, you mean jicama?
Yeah, that sounds good. Tell me about that. Is it known by any other name?
Yeah, I'm pretty interested in this jicama introduction in the catalog, which says, jicama, also known as Mexican potato or yam bean. This Central American tropical native requires a long, warm growing season. Except in horticultural zones 9 to 10, it is best started indoors, 8 to 10 weeks prior to transplanting out after all danger of frost has passed. Jicama is grown for its juicy, crunchy, globular, tuberous root. Its prolific seed pod-studded vines will climb with structural support but can ramble on the ground. Give it loads of room. Harvest tubers before the first frost and store for up to 4 months in a cool, dry cellar. Make sure that animals and children do not eat jicama leaves, ripe pods, or seeds. They contain toxic rotenone, a natural insecticide. So can we talk about yam bean? Who do you think calls jicama yam bean?
someone who has never seen a yam or a bean.
It's weird because jicama is, as they mentioned, famously crunchy. And they're comparing it to two things that, when properly prepared, are
extremely not
velvety and not crunchy at all. I guess the thing is that it is a legume, but you eat the root. And so that's why people called it yam bean.
An additional description for this on the website reads, its thin-skinned ivory-flesh tuber is juicy and slightly sweet, but what sets it apart is its big crispy crunch that we think is better than a water chestnut. Jicama is much loved raw in salads, pita bread sandwich fillings, crudité platters, and salsas. It doesn't discolor once cut. It retains its distinctive crunch when cooked in stir-fries, spring rolls, and sauces to serve over Asian noodles. You could even cut it and use it like little crackers topped with soft, piquant cheeses and little ribbons of roasted red bell peppers.
Wait, did it have the sentence, you could even cut it and use it like little crackers?
Yeah. Topped with soft, piquant cheeses and little ribbons of roasted red bell peppers. That's appetizing, is it not?
Well, sure.
Or do you think
that all sounds fine? I like
you don't believe it.
Roasted peppers and piquant little cheeses or whatever. But the idea that you can use it like little crackers feels, people who want to eat a low carb diet are really, they're really trying to convince the rest of us that it's not gross bullshit.
You think you should eat a little cracker if you want a little cracker?
You can have a little cracker as a treat.
All right. Well, before we go, I did want to mention, like I said, in our CD short for next week, I think we're going to read some John Scheepers flower bulb descriptions. But one interesting creation of John Scheepers, which he copyrighted in 1927, was the, quote, color harmony indicator for flowers. So this is like a tool he developed, which he intended to revolutionize the way flower bulbs were used in terms of like creating a color palette for spring and summer gardens. He advised that from the rainbow of colors, one would select their flower bulbs based on either analogous harmonies or complementary colors. He suggested that he provided this rotating color wheel that you could use to select varieties, and he described cool colors as though those that suggest water, ice, the sky, and foliage, and warm colors as those that suggest sunlight and fire. Advancing colors were reds, orange, and yellows, the colors with long wavelengths, which he also called aggressive colors. So they do host a picture, it's the only picture of this I could find online, of this tool, this color harmony indicator for flowers. Let me text it to you, Allison, so you can see it. I will say I did find a place online where you can get a higher resolution version of this, but it's hosted by Yale University, and there's a note on the site that said this resource is only available to those affiliated with Yale University. So
wow,
not us,
bizarre.
but that's in keeping with the John Scheepers pedigree that only Yaleys can know about his color harmony indicator for flowers. I'll link to it in the description.
I mean, it's just use complementary colors.
Look, he fucking copyrighted this shit.
Just the concept of a color wheel.
Yeah, that's right. I bet he's making money off of it to this day. His kids are eating human flesh
They're hunting the most dangerous game.
On the residuals from this color harmony indicator for flowers.
Wow, we live in a broken society. Maybe we'd better not do a CD short of the John Scheepers catalog, because we've really enticed his children to want to sue us for copyright infringement.
I think it'll be all right. Oh, and hey, I did want to direct any interested listeners to, I read this past week an article in Scalawag, which is I don't know how they describe themselves. It's a southern leftist periodical of sorts, but they had an article from this past month that I'll link to, titled Salt, Soil, and Supper, From Cell to Soil. And it's about a project that I found to be really interesting called Solitary Gardens, which is sort of it's an art project and a sort of activist piece. I guess it originated with the work of an artist, Jackie Summel, I guess is her name, was a formerly incarcerated woman herself, and now a multidisciplinary artist. And this project, I guess she had spent many years corresponding with a gentleman who had been held for 41 years in solitary confinement, named Herman Wallace. He was ultimately, I guess, exonerated and released, but he spent 41 years in solitary confinement. And in their correspondence, he would often speak at length about the garden that he dreamed of having when he was able to get out. And he planned it out and diagrammed it, and she built the garden for him based on his specifications, even while he was still inside. And this is expanded into a project called Solitary Gardens, where other people who are in solitary confinement are invited to plan and enact a garden with help from people on the outside. And these gardens they're specifically designed to be the scope of the 6 by 9 foot cell that these people are horrifyingly and unjustly held inside. It seems like a really beautiful idea to me, and if you want to read more about it, I'll link to it in the description. But yeah, you can go to solitarygardens.org. You can not only read about the project, but you can see some of the garden designs that were built by people on the inside and then enacted by people on the outside, with the hope that, at some point we progress to the point at which there are no longer people on the inside. That couldn't have been less eloquent, but
it's a very cool idea. It's like somewhere in between playing a game of chess through the mail and like a Sol LeWitt painting.
Yeah. Wow. What a good analogy that is. Yeah, because not only, did they design these and they were built by advocates on the outside, but you could go, if you wanted to this website, look at the garden design they had devised and, build it yourself also. And if you are so inclined, you can elect to follow us on Twitter at @CDBusiness or on Instagram at CDBusinessPod. You can email us at cdbusinesspod@gmail.com. Let us know if you want us to talk about a particular catalog or leave us a review, and we'll read it, certainly. And assuming they are prepared in the form of a gratin, you should eat your vegetables.
We're all just doing the best we can.
Speak for yourself.
It's city business. It's city business. Boring talk about seeds, city talk between boys. Mind-numbing chatter about our mules and spores. We'll dig a ditch and moan and split the difference. City business. It's city business.